Have you ever made a mistake that cost you your freedom? Sarah Jenkins did. She was just a broke waitress working the graveyard shift in Chicago, scraping by on tips and stale coffee. Then she saw a little girl collapse in the freezing rain. No ID, no parents, just a shattered iPhone clutching a single contact. Daddy. Sarah pressed dial, expecting a worried father. Instead, she woke up the devil. She didn't know she was calling Dominic Moretti the most dangerous man in the city, and by the time the black SUVs screeched to a halt, it was too late to hang up. This isn't a fairy tale. This is how a good deed turned into a deadly obsession. Buckle up. The rain in Chicago didn't just fall, it punished. It was a freezing, horizontal sleet that bit exposed skin and turned the pavement of Wacker Drive into a slick, oil-stained mirror. Sarah Jenkins adjusted the collar of her thrift store coat, shivering as the wind whipped through the thin wool. It was 2:15 a.m. A shift at Sal's all-night diner had ended 15 minutes ago, and her feet throbbed in rhythm with the headache behind her eyes. She had $42 in tips in her pocket, enough for groceries, but not enough for the rent due on Tuesday. She kept her head down, counting the cracks in the sidewalk, trying to ignore the gnawing anxiety that had become her constant companion since her mum got sick. Then she heard it. It wasn't a cry. It was a thud. A soft, wet sound like a heavy bag of laundry hitting the pavement. Sarah stopped. She looked across the narrow alleyway between a closed pawn shop and a condemned apartment building. At first she saw nothing but trash bags and shadows. Then a shadow moved. "Hello?" Sarah called out, her voice cracking. No answer. Just the hiss of rain on asphalt. Against every survival instinct she had honed living on the south side, Sarah stepped into the alley. Huddled against a dumpster, half submerged in a murky puddle, was a child. A girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, wearing a soaking wet pink nightgown that looked like silk. No coat, no shoes. "Oh my God," Sarah gasped, dropping to her knees. The water soaked through her jeans instantly. She touched the girl's shoulder. The child was burning up, her skin radiating a terrifying heat despite the freezing rain. Her breathing was shallow, a rattling wheeze escaping blue lips. "Hey, sweetie, can you hear me?" Sarah asked, frantically rubbing the girl's arms. The girl's eyelids fluttered. They were dark, unfocused. "Daddy," she whimpered. Her hand, clenched into a tight fist, opened slightly. Inside was a cracked iPhone 14 Pro, the screen glowing faintly. Sarah grabbed the phone, 3% battery. "I'm going to get you help," Sarah promised, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked around. The street was deserted. No cabs. No police. If she waited for an ambulance here, the girl might freeze to death or go into shock before they arrived. She looked down at the phone. There was no passcode lock on the screen, just a wallpaper photo of this little girl smiling on a yacht, holding a giant gelato. Sarah swiped to the contacts. There was only one number saved. Daddy. She didn't think. She pressed the call button. It rang once. Isabella. The voice on the other end was deep, baritone, and terrifyingly calm. It wasn't the frantic voice of a worried parent. It was the voice of a man who expected immediate answers. "Hello," Sarah stammered. I found this phone. And a little girl. Who is this?" The voice dropped an octave. The temperature in the alley seemed to drop with it. "Where is my daughter?" "She's collapsed," Sarah said, panic rising. "In the alley off Wacker and Lake, behind the pawn shop. She's burning up, sir. She needs an ambulance. I'm calling 911 right now." I just thought. "Do not call 911, the man ordered. The command was absolute. It snapped like a whip. "Stay exactly where you are. If you move her, if you hang up, if you speak to a soul, I will find you. Do you understand? She's sick. She needs a doctor," Sarah yelled back, the adrenaline overriding her fear. "I don't care who you are. She's dying in a puddle." 2 minutes, the man said. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone. "Jerk," she whispered, shoving the phone into her pocket. She scooped the girl up. The child was surprisingly light, her bones fragile like a bird's. Sarah pulled her own coat off and wrapped it around the shivering girl, leaving herself exposed to the biting sleet. She sat on a relatively dry crate, rocking the girl back and forth. "It's okay. He's coming. Your daddy's coming. Your daddy's coming." It wasn't 2 minutes. It was 90 seconds. Sarah didn't hear a siren. She heard the roar of engines, expensive, high-performance engines. 3 matte black Cadillac Escalades tore around the corner, ignoring the red light, and screeched to a halt, boxing in the alley entrance. Sarah clutched the girl tighter, her breath hitching. The doors flew open in perfect synchronization. 6 men poured out. They were giants, dressed in tailored dark suits that cost more than Sarah's entire education. They moved with military precision, hands hovering near their waistbands. Then the rear door of the middle SUV opened. The man who stepped out didn't run. He stalked. He was tall, well over 6'3", with broad shoulders that strained against a charcoal suit. His hair was dark, slicked back from a face that looked like it had been carved from granite-sharp jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes the color of stormy steel. He didn't look at the gunmen. He looked straight at Sarah. Or rather, through her. "Give her to me," he said. It was the voice from the phone. Dominic Moretti. Sarah froze. The men had surrounded her, but they kept a respectful distance from the boss. Is she okay?" Sarah asked, her teeth chattering from the cold and the terror. Dominic reached down and took the girl from Sarah's arms with a gentleness that contradicted his terrifying presence. He pressed his cheek to the girl's forehead. A flicker of something raw pain. Panic crossed his face for a microsecond before the stone mask slammed back into place. "Get Dr. Aris on the line. Now." Dominic barked at the man to his left. He turned back to the SUV. Sarah stood up, her legs wobbling. She was soaked, freezing, and suddenly very alone. I gave her my coat. She was so cold." Dominic stopped. He turned slowly. He looked at Sarah for the first time. Really looked at her. He saw the worn-out sneakers, the waitress uniform, the shivering frame. He snapped his fingers. 2 of the guards grabbed Sarah's arms. "Hey, what are you doing?" Sarah screamed, struggling. "I helped her. I saved her." "You found her," Dominic said coldly, sliding into the back seat with his daughter. "Or you took her. We'll find out which one it is shortly." "I didn't take anyone. Let me go. Put her in the second car," Dominic ordered. "Bring her to the estate." "No, please." Sarah kicked out, connecting with the guard's shin, but it was like kicking a tree trunk. They shoved her into the back of the second SUV. The door slammed shut, locking with a heavy mechanical thud. The scent of expensive leather and gun oil filled her nose. As the convoy peeled away, speeding into the rainy Chicago night, Sarah realized with a sinking horror that her life as a waitress was over. She hadn't just called a wrong number. She had called the head of the Chicago outfit. And now, she was his prisoner. The drive took 40 minutes. Sarah spent the entire time huddled in the corner of the plush leather seat, flanked by 2 silent guards who looked like statues. She tried to ask where they were going once. The guard on her left simply tapped the side of his earpiece and ignored her. They left the city skyline behind, driving north toward the affluent, secluded estates of Lake Forest. The convoy turned onto a private road, passing through massive wrought-iron gates adorned with a stylized M. The Moretti estate wasn't a house. It was a fortress masked as a mansion. Stone walls, security cameras every 10 feet, and a silence that felt heavier than the city noise. The cars stopped in a circular driveway. Sarah was hauled out before the wheels even stopped rolling. The rain had stopped, but the air was biting cold. "Move." The guard grunted, pushing her toward the massive oak double doors. Inside, the house was breathtakingly cold. Marble floors, high ceilings, minimal furniture. It looked like a museum where no one was allowed to touch anything, let alone live. They dragged her into a library that smelled of old paper and cigars. "Sit," the guard commanded, pointing to a wooden chair in the center of the room. Sarah sat. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop the shaking. She was still in her wet uniform. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The silence was psychological torture. Finally, the doors opened. Dominic Moretti walked in. He had removed his suit jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his white dress shirt, revealing forearms corded with muscle and a tattoo of a dagger wrapped in vines on his left wrist. He looked exhausted, but the dangerous energy around him hadn't dissipated. If anything, it was more focused. He walked to a wet bar in the corner, poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass, and downed it in one swallow. He didn't offer her any. He turned, leaning against the heavy mahogany desk. "Dr. Aris says she's stable," Dominic said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Pneumonia, and traces of a sedative in her system." Sarah's eyes widened. "Sedative, Sedative? I didn't give her anything. I found her like that." Dominic walked toward her slowly, like a predator circling prey. "Isabella hasn't left this house in 3 years. The security system here is state-of-the-art. Motion sensors, thermal imaging, 24-hour guards. And yet she ends up 5 miles away, in an alley, with a waitress who just happened to be there." He stopped inches from her. She could smell him sandalwood, rain, and danger. "I work at Sal's," Sarah said, her voice shaking but her chin held high. She refused to cower, even if she was terrified. "I was walking home. I heard a noise. I helped her. That is the truth." Dominic studied her face. He was looking for a micro-expression, a tick, a lie. His eyes were intense, analyzing every pore. "Who do you work for?" he asked softly. "Is it Enzo? Did the Ricky family pay you to stage a rescue, win my trust?" "I don't know who Enzo is. I don't know who you are," Sarah snapped. "I'm nobody. I have $42 in my pocket and a tuition bill I can't pay. If I was a kidnapper, I'd be a terrible one because I called you." Dominic stared at her for a long beat. "Desperation makes people do stupid things, miss." "Jenkins. Sarah Jenkins. Sarah." He tested the name on his tongue. It sounded like a threat. "You have no criminal record. I checked while you were in the car. But clean records can be bought." He reached into his pocket and pulled out her phone, the cheap Android with the cracked screen she had dropped in the SUV. He placed it on the table. "My head of security found a breach in the East Wing. Someone let Isabella out. Someone gave her a sedative to keep her quiet, but she woke up too early and wandered off." He leaned in close, his hands gripping the arms of her chair, trapping her. "If you were part of the extraction team, tell me now, and I will make your death quick. If you lie to me, and I find out later, I will peel apart everything you love until there is nothing left." Sarah's tears welled up, hot and stinging. "I swear on my mother's grave," she whispered. "I just wanted to help her." The door creaked open. A frantic-looking man in a white coat stuck his head in. "Mr. Moretti." "She's awake. She's asking for the angel lady." Dominic froze. He looked at the doctor, then back at Sarah. "The what?" "She says the angel lady gave her a coat," the doctor said. She says the bad man in the mask put her in a van, but she ran away when the van stopped. She says the angel lady found her in the rain." Dominic's grip on the chair loosened. The tension in his shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch. He straightened up, adjusting his cuffs. He looked at Sarah, really seeing her for the second time. He saw the wet uniform clinging to her skin, the goosebumps on her arms, the sheer exhaustion in her eyes. He had accused her, threatened her, and kidnapped her, and she had saved his daughter's life. He didn't apologize. Men like Dominic Moretti didn't apologize. He walked to the door. "Get her dry clothes," he ordered the guard, "and food, whatever she wants." "Am I free to go?" Sarah asked, her voice small. Dominic paused at the threshold. He didn't turn around. "No," he said. "You're the only witness to the person who took her. You've seen my face. You've seen my house." He turned his head slightly, his grey eyes catching the light. "Until I find the traitor who did this, Sarah Jenkins, you belong to me." The doors closed, leaving Sarah alone in the library, dry clothes or not. Realizing she had traded a cold alley for a gilded cage, the room they put her in was larger than the entire apartment Sarah shared with her mother. It was decorated in creams and golds, with a four-poster bed that looked like a cloud on a balcony overlooking a sprawling, manicured garden that disappeared into the dark forest line, but the door was locked from the outside. Sarah had spent the first night pacing. She hadn't slept. Every creak of the house sounded like a threat. She had showered the grime of the alley off her skin, scrubbing until she was raw, trying to wash away the feeling of Dominic Moretti's cold grey eyes dissecting her soul. Morning came with a soft click of the lock. An older woman entered. She was stout, with steel grey hair pulled into a severe bun and a uniform that brooked no argument. "I am Beatrice," the woman said, setting a silver tray on the table. The smell of fresh espresso, croissants, and fruit filled the room. "Eat. Mr. Moretti expects you in the study in 30 minutes. "I want to go home," Sarah said, standing by the window. "My mum, she's sick. She needs me to help her with her morning meds." Beatrice paused at the door. Her expression softened, just a fraction. "Your mother is being taken care of better than you could." "What does that mean?" Sarah demanded, stepping forward. 30 minutes, Miss Jenkins." The lock clicked shut again. 30 minutes later, 2 guards, different ones this time, but with the same dead-eyed professionalism, escorted Sarah down the grand staircase. The house was a masterpiece of architecture, a blend of Italian Renaissance and modern minimalism, but it felt lifeless. It was a mausoleum for the living. They brought her to the study. Dominic was there, standing behind his desk, reading a file. He looked like he hadn't slept either. There were dark circles under his eyes, but his suit was immaculate. "Sit," he said, not looking up. Sarah remained standing. "Where is my mother?" Dominic closed the file. He looked at her. "Linda Jenkins. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. Chemo stopped working 2 months ago because the insurance capped out. You're 3 months behind on rent. You're working double shifts at a diner that violates 6 different health codes just to pay for pain management pills that barely work." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "How do you?" "I know everything," Dominic said simply. "I have to. It keeps me alive." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. "Your mother was transferred this morning to St. Jude's private oncology wing. It is the best facility in the state. Dr. Evans, the leading specialist in the country, has already reviewed her case. He believes an experimental immunotherapy trial could save her." Sarah's knees hit the chair. She sat down because she couldn't stand. You moved her without asking me." "I saved her," Dominic corrected. "Something you couldn't do." "Why?" Sarah whispered. "What do you want?" "Isabella," Dominic said. The name cracked the ice in his voice. "She hasn't spoken a word since I brought her home last night. She screams if the nurses come near her. She throws things if the nurses come near her. She throws things if the guards enter the room. She is traumatized." He stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against the front of it, crossing his arms. "She asked for you this morning. The angel lady." Sarah looked at her hands. "So you want me to—" "What?" "Babysit. I want you to live here," Dominic said. "Indefinite period. You will be her companion. You will make her feel safe. You will stay within the estate walls. You will have no contact with the outside world except for monitored visits with your mother. And if I say no—" Dominic gestured to the door. "Then you walk out. I'll have a car take you to your apartment. But I will pull the funding for your mother's treatment. She will be back in the county hospital by tonight." Sarah stared at him with horror. "You're a monster." "I am a father," Dominic replied, his voice hard. "And right now, my daughter is the only thing that matters. I will burn the world to keep her safe. If I have to buy you, blackmail you, or break you to ensure her happiness, I will do it without blinking." He held her gaze. The air between them crackled with tension, fear on her side, ruthless determination on his. "Do we have a deal, Sarah?" Sarah thought of her mom lying in that cramped, dingy bedroom, coughing until she couldn't breathe. She thought of the medical bills stacked on the kitchen counter. "I see her 3 times a week," Sarah negotiated, her voice trembling. "Twice," Dominic countered, "and always with an escort." "Deal." Dominic pressed a button on his desk. "Take Miss Jenkins to Isabella's room." As Sarah stood to leave, Dominic spoke one last time. "Sarah." She turned. "If you hurt her," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a scream. "If you let anyone get to her, the cancer will be the least of your family's problems." The transition was jarring. Sarah went from serving eggs to truck drivers to living in a palace where the towels were made of Egyptian cotton and the silence was heavy enough to choke on. Isabella's room was a fortress within a fortress. It was filled with toys, giant stuffed bears, a dollhouse that cost more than Sarah's car, an art station, but the curtains were drawn tight. When Sarah first walked in, Isabella was hiding under the bed. "Hey, Bella," Sarah said softly, sitting cross-legged on the floor. She didn't try to pull the girl out. She just sat there. "It's Sarah, from the rain." For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then a small hand reached out. Sarah took it. By the end of the first week, Sarah was the only person Isabella would tolerate. They spent hours painting, reading, and watching cartoons. Sarah learned that Isabella loved strawberry gelato, hated the color yellow, and was terrified of loud noises. She also learned about Dominic. He was a ghost in his own house. He would leave before dawn and return late at night, smelling of cigar smoke and expensive scotch. Sometimes Sarah would catch him standing in the doorway of Isabella's room, watching them play. He never entered. He looked like a man starving, watching a feast through a glass window. One Tuesday night, 3 weeks into Sarah's captivity, a thunderstorm rolled over Lake Forest. It started with a low rumble and escalated quickly. A massive crack of thunder shook the house. From down the hall, Sarah heard a scream. She dropped the book she was reading in her room and sprinted down the corridor. She burst into Isabella's room. The little girl was thrashing in her bed, tangled in the sheets, screaming in sheer terror. "No! No! The bad man! Daddy!" Sarah dove onto the bed, gathering the small, trembling body into her arms. "Shh! I've got you. I've got you. It's just noise, baby. It's just the sky clapping." Isabella clung to Sarah's neck, sobbing hysterically. "I'm here," Sarah hummed, rocking her back and forth. She started to sing, a low, melodic lullaby her mother used to sing to her. "Lavender's blue, dilly dilly, lavender's green." Isabella's sobs slowly turned into hiccups. Her grip loosened. Sarah kept singing, stroking the girl's hair. She was so focused she didn't hear the door open. When she finally looked up, Dominic was there. He was soaking wet, his dress shirt clinging to his chest, rain dripping from his hair. He had clearly just run in from outside. He was breathing hard, a gun held loosely in his right hand at his side. He must have heard the scream and thought the worst. He saw Sarah holding his daughter. He saw Isabella asleep, her tear-stained face pressed against Sarah's chest. Dominic holstered the gun. He walked into the room, his steps silent on the plush carpet. He stopped at the edge of the bed. For a moment, he looked utterly broken. The mask of the Mafia Don slipped, revealing a terrified father who didn't know how to comfort his own child. "She used to love the rain," Dominic whispered. "Before." "She's safe," Sarah whispered back. "She just got scared." Dominic reached out, his hand hovering over Isabella's head. He hesitated, then pulled back. "You should dry off," Sarah said, her voice soft. You'll catch a cold. Dominic looked at her. His eyes searched hers, looking for the fear he was used to seeing, but in this dimly lit room, with the smell of rain and lavender, the fear was gone. There was only a strange, quiet intimacy. "Thank you," he said. It was the first time he had thanked you. "She needs her father, Dominic," Sarah said, balding crossing a line. "Not a guard, not a checkbook. She needs you." Dominic's jaw tightened. "I am dangerous, Sarah. Everything I touch breaks. Look at her mother. Look at what happened to her in that alley. The closer I get, the more danger she is in." "That's a lie you tell yourself to avoid being vulnerable," Sarah shot back. Dominic's eyes flashed. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. The air in the room suddenly felt hot. "Be careful, Sarah. You are here to do a job. Don't think you know me." "I don't know you," Sarah whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs, not from fear this time, but from something else entirely. "But I know you love her." Dominic stared at her mouth, then her eyes. For a second, Sarah thought he might kiss her. The tension was a pulled rubber band ready to snap. He pulled away abruptly. "Stay with her tonight," he ordered, his voice rough. He turned and walked out, leaving a puddle of rainwater on the floor. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. The next day, the atmosphere in the house shifted. The staff treated Sarah with more respect. Beatrice even smiled when she brought breakfast. But the peace was fragile. That afternoon, Dominic called Sarah to his office. He wasn't alone. A man was with him. Slick, handsome, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sarah, this is Silvio," Dominic said, "my underboss." Silvio looked Sarah up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. "So this is the civilian who found the Principessa. A pretty little thing. She is staff," Dominic said sharply. "Treat her as such." Silvio raised his hands in mock surrender. "Of course, boss. I just came to deliver the report on the security breach." "And?" Dominic asked. "We found the driver of the van," Silvio said, his eyes flicking to Sarah. "Dead. 2 bullets to the back of the head. Professional hit. Whoever took Isabella, they're cleaning up their loose ends." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "But here is the interesting part," Silvio continued, pulling a plastic bag from his pocket. Inside was a small gold charm bracelet. "We found this in the van." Dominic took the bag. His face went pale. "This is Maria's," he whispered. "Isabella's mother. She was wearing it when she died." "Exactly," Silvio said softly. "Which means the person who orchestrated the kidnapping had access to the family vault. It's someone inside the circle, Dom." Dominic's hand crushed the plastic bag. The temperature in the room plummeted. "Get out," Dominic growled. Silvio nodded and left, brushing past Sarah. As he passed her, he whispered, "Watch your back, sweetie. Accidents happen in big houses like this." Sarah shuddered. Dominic was staring out the window, his back to her. "Dominic?" she asked tentatively. "They used my dead wife's jewelry to lure my daughter out," Dominic said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "They told her mommy was waiting." He turned to face Sarah. The vulnerability from the night before was gone. In its place was a cold, lethal fury. "You need to be ready," he said. "Ready for what?" "The annual gala is in 2 days. Everyone in the organization will be here. The captains, the associates, the politicians we own, and the traitor." He walked over to her. "You're going to be there, by my side." "Me? Why?" "Because," Dominic said, reaching out to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her jaw, sending a jolt of electricity through her. "You are the only person in this house I know I didn't hire. You're the only one I can trust." "I'm just a waitress, Dominic." "Not anymore," he said darkly. "Tonight, I'm sending a tailor. You will look like a queen, because if they think you mean something to me, the traitor will come for you. And when they do, His eyes promised violence. "I will be waiting." Sarah realized then that she wasn't just a nanny. She was bait. The dress arrived in a velvet box carried by two women who didn't speak English. It was a deep, blood-red silk that looked like liquid fire. When Sarah put it on, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. The gown hugged her curves like a second skin, with a slit that ran up her thigh and a back that plunged dangerously low. She wasn't Sarah the waitress anymore. She looked like a weapon. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Dominic entered. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him with lethal precision, a black bow tie stark against his white shirt. He stopped dead when he saw her. For a long moment, the room was silent. Dominic's eyes traveled from her hemline to her eyes, dark and unreadable. He walked over slowly, standing behind her, looking at their reflection in the mirror. "You look—" He trailed off, his voice husky. He cleared his throat. "Convincing." "Is that all?" Sarah asked, turning to face him. Her heart was pounding. "Just a convincing target." Dominic reached out, his fingers grazing her bare shoulder. His skin was hot. "No, you look breathtaking, and that terrifies me." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a diamond necklace, a choker of solitaire diamonds with a single ruby teardrop in the center. "Turn around," he commanded softly. Sarah turned. She felt the cold metal against her skin, then the warmth of his fingers as he clasped it. His breath fanned against her neck, sending shivers down her spine. He didn't pull away immediately. He stood there, inhaling the scent of her hair. "Stay close to me tonight," he whispered, his lips brushing her ear. "Do not leave my sight. Not for a second." The gala was held in the great hall of the estate. It was a scene of decadent excess. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars hung from the ceiling. A live orchestra played classical music that floated over the hum of conversation. The room was filled with men in tuxedos and women in diamonds, sipping champagne and discussing power as if it were the weather. When Dominic and Sarah appeared at the top of the grand staircase, the room went silent. Dominic offered her his arm. "Ready?" "No," Sarah whispered. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." They descended. Sarah felt hundreds of eyes on her, assessing her, judging her, wondering who the unknown beauty on the Don's arm was. "Smile," Dominic murmured through his teeth. "You are the mistress of the house tonight. Own it." Sarah lifted her chin. She channeled every ounce of grit she had learned on the streets of Chicago. She smiled a cool, detached smile that matched Dominic's stone face. As they moved through the crowd, Dominic introduced her simply as Sarah. No last name, no explanation. The mystery drove them mad. Silvio appeared near the bar, holding a martini. His eyes lingered on the ruby at Sarah's throat. "Beautiful choice, boss," Silvio said, clinking his glass against Dominic's. "That necklace. Didn't Maria wear that at your wedding?" The air around them froze. Dominic's grip on Sarah's waist tightened to the point of pain. "It suits Sarah better," Dominic said coldly. Silvio's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "Bold statement. Some of the capos are whispering, Dom. They say you're distracted. They say a man who plays house with a stray cat isn't fit to lead the lions." "Let them whisper," Dominic said, leaning in. "Lions don't concern themselves with the opinions of sheep or hyenas." Silvio chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Enjoy the party, Sarah. Try the crab cakes, they're to die for." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. "He hates you," Sarah whispered. "He wants to be me," Dominic corrected. "There is a difference." The orchestra swelled into a waltz. Dominic pulled Sarah onto the dance floor. He moved with surprising grace for a man of his size. One hand held hers, the other rested firmly on the small of her back, guiding her effortlessly. "You dance well for a waitress," Dominic murmured, pulling her closer than necessary. "My dad taught me," Sarah said, a pang of sadness hitting her. before he left. He was a fool to leave. Sarah looked up at him. The lights of the chandelier reflected in his grey eyes. For a moment the room disappeared. The danger, the guns, the Mafia, it all faded. There was just the heat of his hand on her waist and the intensity of his gaze. "Dominic," she breathed. "Sarah," he replied, his voice rough. "I." Suddenly the lights went out. The music stopped. A collective gasp rippled through the room. "Stay down," Dominic roared, shoving Sarah behind him. Pop, 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 silenced gunshot behind him. Pop, pop, silenced gunshots. The sound of glass shattering. Screams erupted. "Dominic!" Sarah yelled, grabbing his jacket. "The library," he ordered. "Go, now! Not without you! Go!" He pushed her toward the side exit just as emergency lights flickered on, bathing the room in a sickly red glow. Chaos erupted. Men were drawing guns from their jackets. Tables were overturned. Sarah scrambled toward the heavy oak doors of the library corridor. She looked back once. Dominic was in the center of the room, a gun in his hand, firing with calm precision at 3 men rushing the stage. She burst into the hallway, her heels slipping on the polished floor. She needed to get to Isabella. The nursery was up the back stairs. She hiked up her dress and ran. She reached the service stairwell, tearing open the door. A hand shot out from the darkness, grabbing her hair. Sarah screamed, clawing at the hand. "Gotcha, bitch," a voice hissed. It was Silvio. He slammed her against the wall, pressing the barrel of a pistol under her chin. He smelled of expensive cologne and sweat. "Where is she?" Silvio snarled. "Where is she?" Silvio snarled. "Where is the brat?" "I don't know," Sarah cried. "Liar!" He struck her across the face with the back of his hand. Sarah tasted blood. Dominic hid her. "He knew I'd make a move tonight. Tell me where she is, and I'll let you live." "Why?" Sarah spat, glaring at him. "She's a child." "She's his weakness," Silvio yelled. "As long as she breathes, Dominic is soft. He's careful. The outfit needs a war leader, not a babysitter. Once she's gone, he'll break. And I will take the throne." "You're sick," Sarah hissed. "I'm ambitious." He cocked the hammer of the gun. "Last chance. Where is the girl?" "Go to hell. Go to hell. Go to hell." Silvio grinned. "Ladies first." He squeezed the trigger. Click. The gun misfired. For a split second, Silvio looked at the weapon in confusion. That was all Sarah needed. She didn't scream. She didn't cower. She remembered the self-defense class she took at the community center. Eyes, throat, groin. She drove the heel of her stiletto into Silvio's foot with all her strength. As he howled, she jammed her thumb into his eye socket. Silvio shrieked, dropping the gun and stumbling back, clutching his face. Sarah dove for the gun. It slid across the floor, skittering into the shadows. Silvio recovered fast. He roared, lunging at her, tackling her to the ground. His hands wrapped around her throat, squeezing. "Die!" he screamed, spit flying onto her face. Sarah clawed at his hands, her vision swimming with black spots. She couldn't breathe. The red dress was tearing. The world was fading. Isabella, she thought. If I die, he gets Isabella. Suddenly, Silvio was ripped off her. It was like watching a rag doll being thrown by a hurricane. Dominic was there. He had hurled Silvio against the opposite wall with such force that the plaster cracked. Dominic didn't have a gun. He didn't need one. He was a force of nature. Silvio scrambled up, pulling a knife from his ankle holster. "It's over, Dom. My men have the house surrounded." "You touched her," Dominic said. His voice was terrifyingly quiet. "You put your hands on her. I'll kill her. I'll kill the kid." Silvio lunged, the knife flashing. Dominic didn't dodge. He caught Silvio's wrist midair. There was a sickening crunch as bones snapped. Silvio screamed, dropping the knife. Dominic drove a fist into Silvio's stomach, doubling him over, then a knee to his face. Silvio collapsed, blood pouring from his nose and mouth. Dominic stood over him, his chest heaving. He wasn't winded. He was trying to control the urge to tear Silvio apart with his bare hands. He turned to Sarah. She was huddled against the wall, gasping for air, rubbing her bruised neck. Dominic fell to his knees beside her. Sarah, Sarah, look at me. His hands, usually so steady, were shaking as he touched her face. Did he hurt you? Tell me. I'm okay, she rasped. Tell me. I'm okay, she rasped. The gun jammed. Dominic looked at the red mark forming on her cheek where Silvio had struck her. A darkness passed over his eyes, something ancient and cruel. He stood up and walked back to Silvio, who was groaning on the floor. Please, Silvio wheezed, spitting blood. Dom, we're brothers. It was just business. You went after my daughter, Dominic said, picking up the discarded knife. That's business. He looked at Sarah. Cover your eyes. Dominic, no, Sarah whispered. Cover them, he commanded. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut and turned her head. She heard a wet thud. Then silence. It's done, Dominic said. He scooped Sarah up into his arms, bridal style. She buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing. He held her tight, his grip like iron. I've got you, he whispered into her hair. I've got you. He carried her out of the service corridor and into the main hall. The firefight was over. Dominic's loyal guards had secured the room. Bodies, men in masks, littered the floor. Boss, the head of security, ran up. The perimeter is secure. It was Silvio's crew. We got them all. Check the nursery, Dominic barked. Double the guard on Isabella. If a fly gets into that room, I want it shot. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dominic carried Sarah all the way up the grand staircase, ignoring the staring guests, ignoring the blood on his shirt. He kicked open the door to his own bedroom, the master suite Sarah had never entered. He set her down gently on the massive bed. He went into the bathroom and returned with a wet cloth. He sat beside her, gently wiping the blood from her lip. I'm sorry, he said. His voice broke. I told you I was dangerous. I told you this would happen. You saved me, Sarah whispered. I almost got you killed, Dominic countered bitterly. He stood up, pacing the room. I was arrogant. I thought I could use you as bait and keep you safe at the same time. I was wrong. You can't be here, Sarah. It's too dangerous. He stopped at the window, looking out at the dark grounds. Tomorrow morning, I'm sending you away. Switzerland. I have a chalet there. You and your mother. I'll set up an account with $5 million. You'll never have to work again. You'll be safe. Sarah sat up, wincing as her ribs protested. What about Isabella? I'll hire someone else, someone I don't care about. Sarah's heart stopped. What? Dominic turned. His expression was tortured. Don't you get it? Silvio saw it. Everyone saw it. You're a weakness because I care. I can't have weaknesses, not in this life. Sarah stood up, her legs shaky but her resolve steel. She walked across the room until she was standing right in front of him. You're firing me. I am saving you. I don't want to be saved, Sarah said. She reached out and took his hand. His knuckles were bruised and bloody. I want to stay. Sarah, look at me, Dominic yelled, gesturing to his blood-spattered shirt. I'm a killer. I just slaughtered the man with my bare hands. This isn't a romance novel. This is blood and death and fear. You are a waitress who likes poetry and sunny days. You don't belong in the dark. Then turn on the light, Sarah said calmly. She reached up and cupped his face. He flinched, as if her touch burned him. You're not just a killer, Dominic. You're a father who sings off-key to his daughter when she has nightmares. You're a man who saved my mother's life when you didn't have to. You're the man who looked at me tonight like I was the only woman in the room. Dominic closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. Sarah. I'm not leaving, she whispered. I love her. And I think I'm falling in love with you. Dominic's eyes snapped open. The grey was swirling with a storm of emotion. He didn't speak. He crashed his lips onto hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, hungry, fueled by adrenaline and the terror of almost losing her. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, as if he wanted to merge their souls. Sarah kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck. For the first time in his life, Dominic Moretti wasn't the Mafia boss. He was just a man who'd found the one thing worth dying for. But as they broke apart, breathless, a phone rang. Dominic's secure line. He pulled it from his pocket, his face hardening instantly. He answered it. "Speak." His face went from flushed to deadly pale in a second. "What do you mean she's gone?" Sarah's blood ran cold. Dominic dropped the phone. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. "Dominic?" Sarah whispered. "What is it?" He looked at her, and the look in his eyes broke her heart. "The nursery," he whispered. "The guards are dead. Isabella is gone." The nursery wasn't a scene of chaos. It was a scene of silence, which was worse. The window was open, the curtains fluttering like ghosts in the cold night wind. 2 guards lay on the floor, their throats cut with professional efficiency. Dominic didn't scream. He didn't punch the wall. He went completely still. It was the stillness of a bomb the second before detonation. Sarah rushed to the closet where Isabella sometimes hid. Empty. She checked under the bed. Empty. "They didn't break in," Dominic said, his voice sounding like grinding stones. He was kneeling by the door. The alarm keypad, it wasn't bypassed. It was deactivated. He stood up, turning slowly to face the hallway. "Who has the code besides me and the head of security?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Beatrice." They found the housekeeper in the laundry room. She wasn't running. She was sitting on a stool, clutching a rosary, staring at the wall. A suitcase was packed next to her. Dominic kicked the door open. He marched over, grabbed Beatrice by her collar, and slammed her against the washing machine. "Where is she?" he roared. Beatrice didn't fight. She was weeping. "They have my son, Dominic. Richie. Enzo Ricci has my son. He sent me a video. They were going to cut off his fingers if I didn't open the service door. So you gave him my daughter." Dominic's hand tightened around her throat. "You traded my life for yours." "Dominic, stop." Sarah grabbed his arm. "She's the only one who knows where they're taking her. If you kill her, we lose the lead." Dominic stared at the sobbing woman, his chest heaving. He released her, letting her slide to the floor. "Talk," he spat. "Fast. The old airfield," Beatrice gasped. "South. The old airfield," Beatrice gasped. "South, Gary. Rishi has a plane waiting. He's taking her to Italy. He wants to raise her as a Richie, to use her against you forever." "He won't make it to the tarmac," Dominic said. He turned to leave. "I'm coming," Sarah said. "No." "She won't come to you, Dominic," Sarah said. "No." "She won't come to you, Dominic," Sarah yelled. "She's terrified. If there's a firefight, she'll hide. She'll hide. She'll freeze. I'm the only one who can call her out. I'm the only one she trusts right now." Dominic looked at Sarah. He saw the bruises on her neck from Silvio. He saw the ripped red dress. But he also saw a fire that matched his own. She wasn't a civilian anymore. She was a mother wolf protecting her cub. "Get in the car," he said. The drive to the airfield was a blur of speed and silence. Dominic drove the lead SUV, a tactical team following in 2 others. He had shed the tuxedo jacket. He was checking a submachine gun on his lap. "Ricci is old school," Dominic said, breaking the silence. "He won't just leave. He'll want to see me. He'll want to gloat." "What do we do?" Sarah asked. She had changed into a pair of tactical pants and a black sweater she found in the SUV's emergency kit. She felt heavy, not just with fear, but with the realization that she was driving toward a war. "I draw his fire," Dominic said. "You get Isabella. The second you have her, you run. You don't look back. You don't check on me. You run." "Dominic." "Promise me, Sarah." "I promise me, Sarah." "I promise." They crashed through the chain-link fence of the airfield 40 minutes later. It was a desolate place, cracked tarmac, rusted hangars and weeds growing through the concrete. At the end of the runway, a private Gulfstream jet sat with its engines whining, ready for takeoff. 3 SUVs were parked in a semicircle around the jet. Floodlights blinded them as Dominic's convoy screeched to a halt 50 yards away. Dominic stepped out, his hands raised, no weapon visible. "Enzo," he screamed over the roar of the jet engines. "Let's finish this." A man stepped out from behind the wall of guards. Enzo Ricci was older, in his 60s, with silver hair and a long tan coat. He was holding Isabella by the shoulder. The little girl looked small and broken, clutching her stuffed bear. "Dominic," Enzo shouted back, smiling. "You're late. The flight leaves in 10 minutes. Let her go, Enzo." "You're late. The flight leaves in 10 minutes. Let her go, Enzo. This is between us. It was between us when you took the territory from my brother," Enzo yelled. Now it's about legacy. She's going to be a fine Ricci. I'll teach her to hate you, Dominic. I'll teach her that her father was a monster who couldn't protect her." Dominic took a step forward. A dozen laser sights dotted his chest. "Don't take another step, or the girl bleeds," Enzo warned, pulling a pistol and pressing it to Isabella's temple. Sarah watched from the cracked window of the SUV. Her heart was in her throat. She saw Isabella's eyes wide, terrified, searching the darkness. "She needs the angel lady." Sarah opened the door on the side away from the lights. She slipped out into the tall grass bordering the tarmac. "I'm offering you a trade, Enzo," Dominic shouted, his voice steady. "Me for her. I surrender. You can kill me. You can take the territory. Just let the girl walk away." Enzo laughed. "A tempting offer. But why settle for one when I can have both? Kill him." The gunfire erupted instantly. Dominic dove behind the engine block of his SUV as bullets shredded the metal. His tactical team returned fire, the night lighting up with muzzle flashes. "Isabella," Dominic roared, pinning down 2 guards with bursts from his MP5. But Isabella was frozen. She was standing in the open, screaming, covering her ears. Enzo was dragging her toward the plane stairs. Sarah was sprinting. She didn't have a weapon. She had adrenaline and love. She flanked the SUVs, using the chaos to get close to the plane. She reached the stairs just as Enzo was pushing Isabella up. "Hey!" Sarah screamed. Enzo turned, surprised to see a woman in the middle of a war zone. Sarah didn't hesitate. She didn't try to fight him. She tackled Isabella, wrapping her body around the child and rolling them both off the stairs and onto the tarmac, under the belly of the plane. "Get off me!" Enzo shouted, aiming his gun down at them. Bang! Enzo's head snapped back. A single bullet hole appeared in the center of his forehead. He collapsed, tumbling down the stairs. Dominic stood 30 yards away, his pistol smoking, ignoring the bullets whizzing past him. He had taken the shot that no one else could make. "Sarah!" Dominic yelled. "I have her," Sarah screamed back. "We're under the plane." The Ricci guards, seeing their boss dead, panicked. Their formation broke. Dominic's men advanced, ruthless and efficient. Within 2 minutes, the airfield was silent except for the whine of the jet engines. Dominic sprinted to the plane. He dropped to his knees, looking under the fuselage. Sarah was huddled near the landing gear, her body shielding Isabella entirely. She looked up, her face smeared with grease and dirt. "Is it over?" she asked, trembling. Dominic reached out and pulled them both out. He didn't say a word. He crushed them into his chest, burying his face in Sarah's neck, one hand gripping Isabella so tight his knuckles were white. He was shaking. The monster of Chicago was shaking. "It's over," he choked out. "Let's go home." 6 months later, the snow was falling in Lake Forest, covering the estate in a blanket of pristine white. But the house wasn't quiet anymore. Music was playing from the living room, Disney songs, loud and cheerful. In the kitchen, Sarah was trying to bake cookies. She was failing. Flour was everywhere. "You're doing it wrong," Isabella giggled. She was sitting on the counter, swinging her legs. Her cheeks were pink, her eyes bright. The shadows of the alley were gone. "I'm doing my best, Munchkin," Sarah laughed, booping Isabella's nose with a flour-covered finger, arms wrapped around Sarah's waist from behind. Dominic rested his chin on her shoulder. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a cashmere sweater and jeans. The tattoo on his wrist was partially covered by a watch Sarah had given him for Christmas. "The cookies are burning," Dominic noted, kissing her cheek. "I got distracted." Sarah smiled, leaning back into him. "By what?" "By being happy." Dominic turned her around. The darkness in his eyes had settled. It was still there. It would always be there. But it was dormant. "Tamed. My mother called," Sarah said. "The treatment is working. She's in remission." "I know," Dominic said. "I spoke to Dr. Evans this morning. You check up on everything, don't you?" "I protect what's mine," Dominic said seriously. He looked over at Isabella, who was busy stealing chocolate chips, "and I have a lot to protect." He pulled Sarah closer. "Marry me." Sarah blinked. "What?" "I don't want to wait," Dominic said. "I don't want a long engagement. I want you to have my name. I want everyone in this city, everyone in this world, to know that Sarah Jenkins is the queen of this house. Marry me." Sarah looked at the man who had kidnapped her, threatened her, and then walked through fire to save her. She looked at the little girl who called her Mama now. "Ask me nicely," Sarah teased, her eyes wet. Dominic smirked. The arrogant, dangerous smirk she loved. He dropped to one knee right there in the flour-covered kitchen. "Sarah Jenkins, will you make me the luckiest devil on earth?" Sarah looked down at him. "Yes. Yes, you idiot." Isabella cheered, throwing a handful of flour into the air like confetti. Dominic stood up and kissed her, deep and passionate, as the snow fell outside and the fire crackled in the hearth. Sarah had saved a wrong number on a rainy night. In return, she had found a family. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and dangerous and real, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. Wow. I still have chills. From a desperate phone call in a rainy alley to the queen of a mafia empire, Sarah Jenkins didn't just survive Dominic Moretti. She saved him. This story reminds us that sometimes the scariest wrong turns lead us exactly where we need to be. It makes you wonder, if you found a phone with one contact labeled Daddy, would you make the call, even if you knew it might cost you your life? If you love this story, do me a huge favor, smash that like button right now. It helps the channel so much and tells me you want more Mafia dramas like this one. And hey, I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Dominic deserved a happy ending after everything he did? Let me know down below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next part of our storytelling journey. We upload new dramas every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.